welcome back to the channel. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. Some of you have messaged me and asked me why I've been missing in action lately. And the truth is that I've been working on my own magic and mentalism recently, creating my own effects, which I have shared some of them with a few of you. But today I thought I would do a review for you guys, and I've decided I'm going to review Art Deco by Simon Aronson. Now, I haven't seen a review of this book on YouTube, and we are coming up on, I think, 6 years from when Simon Aronson passed away, which is kind of crazy when you think about it, that it's already been 6 years. This was the last book that he published, which I think it was like in 2014 or 2015 he published this. I think you could still get it for 50 bucks, or you may have to buy it used. I don't know if it's actually out of print now, but the book is well worth your money, because you're going to be getting so much for your money. I think there's like 8 chapters in the book, 343 pages, and you can really see how Simon Aronson had come of age by the time he wrote this book, because if you're familiar with his early material, most of his early material was focused on more method, mathematical cleverness and stuff like that, whereas this book was really geared more towards entertainment value. And you could see how he titled the book Art Deco, which is like a play on words, where he's treating the card magic as an art form, really. That's why it's called Compositions with Cards. Everything in this book is card magic. Difficulty-wise, you'll find everything from basically self-working to really expert level. And Simon Aronson is really well known for being one of the fathers of memorized deck magic. Although in this book, there's only 1 chapter on memorized deck magic, which you might find that interesting because there's 8 chapters in the book, and the vast majority of the book is not about memorized deck magic. So I'm going to be going through this with you guys, and as I've mentioned to you guys, I have reread this book several times because I've had it for 10 years now. I've studied it extensively. There are a number of pieces in this book that I still use to this day. I'm going to be giving you guys my own insights along the way. One thing which you may find interesting is that there is a chapter on gaff card magic, which has 3 effects that use some double facers and stuff. And I actually found the envelope that they came in when I bought the book, but as you can imagine, the actual gaffs, long gone, right? Because when I first got the book, I experimented with them and those effects, but very quickly I didn't use them. The gaffs got misplaced. I'm sure they're around somewhere, probably in my basement somewhere in a box. But like a lot of gaff card magic, I stick to using those gaff card effects that use very basic gaffs that are easy to replace, because you will lose them. That's what does happen. Anyway, let's start out with the first chapter of the book. The first chapter of the book is a chapter on techniques. Like a lot of these books on card magic, he starts out with some techniques, and he starts out with the Steve Bedwell control, which is an excellent control if you're not familiar with it. He goes over some variations as well as a glimpse, which is great, and I think it's something that you guys would use because it's really easy to do and it fools everyone. At the end of that chapter, there is a couple of effects that I thought were really good, and they almost felt like they were throwaway effects, but they're actually very useful. One of them is one that he calls an efficient triumph, which is a very basic triumph effect where if you use any deck that's in an order, like a stacked deck or a cyclical deck, you will like that effect because it doesn't alter the order of the cards at all. So it may be something you may want to use as an intro piece, where it looks like, you know, the cards may be getting mixed up, but they're really not. They're really not at all. So that's a very simple triumph effect you might like. And then my favorite effect in that chapter near the very end was one that was called Impromptu Card at Number with Mind Reading. Okay, so this is an effect that can be done with any shuffle deck in use. It's impromptu in nature, which is great because you could do it if somebody just hands you their deck, and you're going to have them make a selection. It's going to be lost in the deck. You're going to spread the cards on the table. You're going to turn around and you're going to tell them to just grab a group from the middle and count those silently. And then you tell them to take those cards and put some on the top and the bottom and close up the deck. You can even have them give the deck a couple of cuts before you turn around. So all you do then is take the deck back. You just kind of glance at the cards as you tell them that you're going to try to get a sense of something. And then you take the cards and you say, you know what, I'm not getting much. But you tell them that you want them to concentrate on their number, that number that they counted. And you start dealing cards off the top of the deck face down. And then you tell them that when you get to their number, for them to, in their mind alone, say stop. And so this almost feels like an out of sight, out of mind effect, because when you get to their number, which obviously you will know, you will say, oh, I sense that you said stop there. You ask them what their card is, and obviously you stopped at their card, which is why it's a card at any number with the mind reading element attached to it, which is great. And what's neat about it is it almost feels like that was a throwaway effect, because he just kind of gives it to you near the end of that chapter. I mean, it doesn't even really have it has a title, but it's just like, you could very easily just brush over that if you're not careful. And the first time I read the book, I think I just kind of glossed over it. There's a couple other things there you'll find. There's a 4-for-4 switch, which I didn't like. You might like that. There's a strip out false shuffle that you might want to learn, especially if you're doing any kind of stack work. You might like that as well. That's in there. But that's pretty much the first and second chapter that has to do with really the techniques. And then afterwards we get into a chapter that has to do with impromptu effects, which is called On the Spot. And I'm only going to touch on those effects that I really liked a lot, because there's quite a few in here. I think there's at least 5 or 6 effects, but the ones that I've used over the past couple of years are the ones I'm going to touch on here. The first one I'm going to touch on is called Double Vision, and this is a 2-person prediction type effect, which I really like a lot because it's from any shuffle deck in use. Again, it's another one of those effects that's really easy to do. And what you're going to do is you're going to let the spectator shuffle the deck. When you take it back, you're going to glance at the cards and you're going to up jog 2 cards near the center of the deck, and then you're going to say, I think I'm going to go with these 2. And then you take out your business card or a piece of paper and you write something down. You say, okay, I made a prediction. And then you could give the deck another shuffle if you want to, but you're going to have one spectator cut off a group of cards and they're going to count those cards out. So they've counted those out and you tell them to remember that number. Then you're going to give those cards they cut off to the second spectator and have them deal them out. And then they're going to select one of those cards apparently freely for themselves. And then what you're going to do is you're going to reassemble the deck, and you're going to have that person that made a selection just stab their selection somewhere in the deck, and you're going to spread it on the table and have the first person start from where they stabbed their card and count down to their number, and wherever card is at their number is going to be the second selection. So 2 selections have been made in a very fair way, and they will match your prediction. The whole effect is completely self-working. It's super simple to perform, yet very baffling to the spectators, because your prediction is made well ahead of time, because they apparently had free choices of how many cards to cut off, which the second person got to choose what card they wanted freely after they dealt those out. And so it feels like there's no way you could have any control over anything. I would say it's absolute beginner level, very easy to perform. It's a great effect. I've used it multiple times and it fools people. And what I really like is it's for 2 people at the same time. I love those kind of effects that are for 2 people at the same time. The next effect in the On the Spot chapter, the impromptu chapter, is called Among the Discards. And this very likely may be your favorite effect in the book, because it's absolutely startling to spectators, and this is a transposition type effect that Simon Aronson created together with John Bannon and David Solomon years ago, where you're going to show 4 aces, have a spectator select 1, and then you're going to show them 2 mates, like 2 queens or 2 jacks. And what you're going to do is you're going to show them how you're going to put the jacks in different parts of the deck, and then you're going to take their ace that they selected and put it in the middle, and you're going to close up the spread, and you tell them that you get an idea of what's going to happen, and when it's going to happen as you push them together, and then you explain to them, but they don't realize where it happened, because not only did those jacks or those queens sandwich the selected ace, but it's no longer in the deck because it's actually like, you know, where they expected the other aces to be, that's where they are now. So they've actually transposed out of the deck. And it's very startling to spectators because it feels like real misdirection happening right under their nose. So I think a lot of people would like that, but personally, I actually prefer the John Bannon version, which was called Watching the Detectives, because John Bannon came up with a more complete routine using this basic premise, where it's a 3-phase routine, where it was called Watching the Detectives, New Jacks, and Full Circle, I think it was what it was called. And you can find that on John Bannon's Bullets After Dark DVD set. That's where he taught it. And the reason why I really like the John Bannon version was because after this first phase, you continue by doing this almost transposition phase where they select another card and it transposes with the ace that they selected. And then finally, the last phase, you basically reproduce all the aces that supposedly were lost in the deck. So it feels like a more robust routine, which is why I would recommend that you check out the John Bannon version, which was in Bullets After Dark. But even if you just performed among the discards, it's an excellent impromptu type of sandwich transposition effect, which it's very startling, it's very shocking, and up until that last minute, it feels totally fair to the spectators. They see you putting those two queens in different parts of the deck, and they see you clearly showing them their ace that they selected as you put it into the middle of the spread. So it's just a shock to them because they're going to feel like they're watching like a hawk, but all the work is already done. I would say difficulty wise, it's beginner level. It's so simple to do. You'll be able to do it instantly almost. So that is among the discards, and then we move on to Double Mente. And Double Mente is a 2-person mind reading effect, which is based off of Ed Marlowe's Double Thought effect. Ed Marlowe published a bunch of variations of Double Thought using 2 decks, using 1 deck. And Simon Aronson's idea is this idea where you have 2 spectators each just think of a card, and then you're going to read their minds, take out 2 cards out of the deck, and then they reveal their cards, and they're those cards. That's it. So in the most pure form, it feels like real mind reading. Of course, there's a lot more involved to it than that, but I still think it's just such an excellent effect to do because the spectators, they're not going to realize what happened until after it happened. I will tell you guys a couple of my own ideas around it because I've been using it for a long time, because I love magic effects that involve multiple spectators, easy to understand, quick, easy to understand, because spectators do not have any type of tolerance to sit there watching some long procedure, right? So because of that, I feel like you need to perform something that's fast and easy to understand for the spectators. So one thing I will tell you is that this can be done with a random shuffle deck in use, but personally I feel that the whole thing can be done much better and much stronger if you use your memorized deck. And that's how I like to do it, because with the memorized deck, the first person is going to make a selection, right? And in the original routine, you had to peek that. So basically in the original routine, what Simon Aronson did was he had the first person just peek a card, and then you had to glimpse it. And then the second person, you would have them just think of a card, right? But the issue is that if you use a mem deck, you can actually just have them select a card. And what I really like is that I've come up with a very simple handling of it where I don't even have to look at the cards until I'm going to take out the cards as a mind reading. And I think that's what makes the whole thing feel even more impossible, because it really feels like each of these people are thinking of a card and you have no idea what it is. Now, what makes Simon Aronson's version of this effect so good is that the first person makes a free selection, and it feels completely free because it is a free selection, right? You tell the second person you want them to just merely thinking of a card, but you don't want them to think of one of the same color. So you have the first person name the color of the card that they're thinking of. The second person just freely thinks of a card. You go through the deck and you take out 2 cards. And there's a lovely convincer that is built in there that helps you get from the one behind to one ahead, which is just awesome. It really is great. And the other thing that I changed in the routine was I didn't like the idea of showing both cards at the same time. I think it's better if you can to show the first selection first and the second selection you show it completely separate, where the cards appear like you're really showing the right card to each person. But to do that, you will have to do like some type of switch, and what I would recommend is that you do a one-hand Mexican turnover if you're using some type of soft surface. If you're not, then maybe you could just do like a 2-hand Mexican turnover, which I've done many times. Nobody even really notices it, because you're asking the question of, you're asking that person to name their card as you're turning it over. It feels like, you know, you're just turning it over. Especially if you do it one-handed, no one is even going to look at your hands, because it's done by the time they even look at you. It's already turned over. And that second person, because of that convincer, they already know that you have their card in your hand, and it just blows them away. And because of the structure of the effect, your spectators will never get ahead of you. They'll be completely baffled. I've had a lot of success with this over the past couple of years, and again, I would highly recommend that you check it out. But I would also recommend that you consider what I told you about using like some type of stacked deck, so that way you will know what card is freely selected without having to do any difficult maneuvering. Even something as simple as just cutting the deck where they chose from and then glimpsing the bottom card to know what card that they took out, I think that works just as well too. And you don't even have to look at the bottom card until you're starting to go through the deck to take out what you're mind reading, right? Which is what makes it really strong. All right, the next chapter is called Two-Faced, and this was a chapter on gaff cards, which I'm just going to skip over because I don't use anything from that chapter. I doubt that you'll like anything in there. You might. I don't know. If you're like into gaff cards, you might really like something in there. Personally, I wouldn't use anything from that chapter. I just didn't think that it was that strong. The next chapter is called Totals, which I thought that was the worst chapter in the whole book, because what it is basically is that you have one or more spectators make selections, and then those selections are added up, and that number indicates where a person's card is and stuff like that. So I don't like effects that are extremely procedure heavy, and spelling tricks or counting tricks like that are just too boring to me and to spectators. So I don't mess with any of those, just because I feel like it's not worth investing your time in, because spectators are going to be bored by anything like that. It's really a chapter. Those effects are probably more appealing to magicians in general. The next chapter is called Birthdays, and this chapter has 3 pieces that revolve around the date book effect. Now, the date book effect is something that's become really popular in recent years, where a date book is introduced where you have cards written on all the different days of every month. And this is essentially a prediction of sorts, because a spectator will be asked to name their birthday or a special date to them, and then they'll make a selection from the deck, and then only then will you show them that the date book has different cards written on every date, and they can look and see what card is written on their date, and then of course it matches the card that they selected. It's a very powerful piece of magic, and if you've watched Simon Aronson on YouTube, you may have seen him perform his version of this that's called Fate, where instead of using a date book, he just has a birthday card, and on the inside of the birthday card he has printed a large grid that has all 365 days with all different cards on it. And obviously he presents this as a birthday type effect with the spectators, and it's very strong. The first time I saw this performed by a professional magician was actually Michael Vincent, his Magic Castle performance. I saw it on YouTube, and it's funny because as soon as he asked the spectator for their birthday, it was either their birthday or it was their anniversary or something, the moment he started to look through the cards, I realized exactly what he was doing, and then it seemed transparent to me, which is why the pieces in this chapter are all designed to hide that, looking through the deck. That's what it's designed to do. And I'm going to give you guys my solution when I get to the end of this, but first let's just go over what Simon Aronson offers you here in the book, because this effect classically is done with a memorized deck. And with a memorized deck, it's really on autopilot. So it's a good reason for you to learn a memorized deck. And you guys can see that I'm still performing this effect all the time, because look, my book, you could see it's 2025. Every year I get one of these and I write out all the cards, which will take you like 20 minutes to do, but then you've got a whole year of performances you could do with this. I don't carry this around with me all the time, but if I know I'm going to go and perform for like a group of people, I always bring it with me because it's very impressive to the whole group. And as I'm going to show you, it's really almost autopilot. Now, the first piece that Simon Aronson goes over is, he calls it the no stack date book. And this is a way to perform the effect if you don't dominate a memorized deck. So if you don't use a memorized deck, you don't have one memorized, you can do this, where he gives you a stack and then a very simple mathematical formula where any date that someone gives you, you can easily convert it into a card. I think that the memorized deck version is a lot easier and quicker, because within 1 second I know exactly what the card is. But if you don't want to use a memorized deck, this may be a solution for you. The next effect is called, or the next piece here is called Fait Accompli, and this is a variation of his Fate effect, where he's giving you a good reason why you go through the deck after they give you the date. And so what ends up happening is you introduce the date book to your spectators. You don't let them look at it yet. Then you tell them that you want them to make a selection. They're going to make a selection from the deck. It's isolated. Only now do you ask them for their birthday. So the strength of this is that the card is in view that they selected before they tell you their date. So then they tell you their birthday, and then you tell them you're going to take out 2 jokers that have an important message on them. And you take out the 2 jokers and you turn them over and show them, one says happy, the other one says birthday on it. And you're basically sandwiching the card that they selected. And the rest of it's pretty much the same as the usual effect, where you have them open up the date book. They see that there's cards on every day of the week. They go to their date, and of course the card matches the card that they selected before they even told you their date. So that is one workable version of the effect, although you would have to carry around those 2 jokers if you want to do it that way, but they're just regular jokers. One that says happy, the other one says birthday. And then the second effect that's in this chapter that's the same kind of effect is called Birthday Backer. And that uses a gaff card that comes with the book. Actually comes in here. Again, not something I would use, but it does give you a reason for why you're going through the deck, because you're going through the deck because you want to show them you have a birthday card in the deck. That's basically the reason why you even go through it. But you basically are, again, searching for the card at that time. So those are the 2 different versions that are in here. Now I'm going to talk to you guys about what I think is the best version. I don't like to use the word best, but I guess it's just the version I use. Okay, so the version that I use is as follows, and you're going to see why I like it. Is the date book is introduced and given to your spectators to hold on to. You tell them, we're going to get back to that in a moment. Hopefully you've already done 1 or 2 effects with the deck that is in your memorized stack. So this is already in mem deck order, okay? So you've already done 1 or 2 effects with it. Only now are you going to ask the spectator to tell you an important date in their life, or their birthday if you don't know them. As soon as they tell that to you, you're going to convert that to a card. So let's say, for instance, that the card that I need to force on the spectator, let's just say that it's like the Ace of Hearts, for instance, right? So I know exactly where that is in my stack. So as they tell you that date, and I'm thinking I know what that card is, all I'm going to do is I'm going to do an estimation cut a little bit before it, and I'm going to say to the person something along the lines of, I'll say to them, I'll use Simon Aronson's when he says, it's not, you mean it's not today? That's what he put in his book. And what that does is that gives you this opportunity for you to just laugh for a second when you say, oh, it's not today. And that will diffuse the whole moment and why you even, so you've cut the deck as you're saying to them, oh, it's not today. And you start laughing and you just glimpse the bottom card. And so now I know exactly where I need to go. So I know, for instance, I know that I need to move, I need to call the 7th card. That's going to be my Ace of Hearts. It's that simple. So now as I'm talking to them, I have all the time in the world that I can just start culling and just say, oh, you know what, here, touch any card you like. They'll touch whatever card that they like. It doesn't matter what card it is. Oh, you like this card here? And you're just gonna put it on the table. That's it, you're gonna just put it on the table. And there you go, you've got the card that you wanna force on them. But the reason why it's so much stronger this way is because you're not looking through the deck. That's what makes it so much stronger. But the trade-off is that you're going to have to do an estimation cut, which I'm going to tell you guys from doing this for a long time, nobody even notices it because it's all done while you're laughing and that you're telling them something, like, oh, it's not today, haha, or, if you ask them what their anniversary is and then say, oh, you actually remembered it, make some silly joke, and that will give you all the excuse to cut the deck. And because you're not going through the deck like this, they're never ever going to expect that somehow you've controlled a card that they're going to have a selection of. And because the selection procedure seems so fair, they can touch any card they want. You tell them just touch any card, right? It feels like they had a completely free choice, which is just great. It really is. And the rest of the effect is exactly as you would expect it to be. So if you don't dominate a mem deck, I would highly urge you to for many different reasons, but this is definitely one of them. This is definitely a very powerful tool. And let's get into the mem deck chapter now. The next chapter is called Memorize Decks, and there's 4 pieces in this chapter. 2 of which use the Aronson stack, which I don't use, so I'm not even going to go over those. But if you use the Aronson stack, you could take a look at those. There is an effect in here called Gemini Meets the Stack, which is the classic Gemini effect for 2 spectators, but you will remain in your stack even when you're done. So some people might like that, but the most useful effect in the chapter, and what I find is really the best effect in the whole book, just because of how useful it is it's called shuffle tracking. Now, this has a built-in deck switch, which is absolutely diabolical. The reason why the effect is so powerful is because it's a killer effect. It's really almost autopilot. As long as you use a memorized deck, it really is autopilot, and it's so easy to do. The only requirements is that you're wearing a jacket. And the beautiful part about it is that this is what it looks like. You're going to have any shuffle deck in use, right? And you're going to let the spectators shuffle it up. Then you're going to have one of them peek a card. They're going to peek the card. Then you're going to show the spectators that could have peeked at any of these. You're going to hand them the deck and tell them, give that a good shuffle. They're going to shuffle it up, and then you're just going to drop it into your pocket, and you're going to tell them to concentrate on your card. You're going to be taking out of your pocket like groups of like 6 to 8 cards and show them and say, I don't think your card is in this group, am I right? And you're not looking at any of the cards. They're going to say no. You go to the next group, take out another group of say 6 to 8 cards, say, I'm also sensing your card's not in this group. They might say yes or no. At some point, you're going to take out one card and just leave it face down. You're not going to show it to them. You say, I'm not so sure about this one. We're going to get back to it. Then you take out another group, show it to them. And it's not in that one, is it? And then finally, like the last group, show it to them, say, I don't sense your cards in this group either. So you go through the whole deck like that. only now do you say, look, there was one card that I didn't show you. Remember I told you I wasn't sure about it? I think that's it. And then you can have them name their card. You can turn it over. You can show them that that is their card. And the beautiful part about the whole effect is that you've switched out one deck for the other one right under their nose, and they will never, ever suspect it because it looks like everything is haphazard. So if you are a memorized deck worker, this one effect will become something that's part of your repertoire. You will use this, hands down. You will use this. And why? Because you're able to switch in your memorized deck anytime that you want to. Me personally, I like carrying around 2 decks that are in mem deck order, so I can take out one in the beginning, do a couple of mem deck effects, then do some, let them shuffle up the cards, do some impromptu effects. Then you can do this and you can bring out another mem deck. So now you're back into your mem deck right under their nose, and they will never, ever, ever suspect that there was a switch, no matter what. And the whole effect is very impressive when you think about it, because they just glimpsed a card and they shuffled the whole deck and it ended up in your pocket. You just took cards out. You didn't look at the faces of any card. Just think about it for a minute yourself, right? You get the idea of why it's so powerful. This is another genius way of using a mem deck. It really is. It's just so powerful. And when you start using it, you'll see for yourself why it's so good. The next chapter is called Eccentrics, and there were 3 effects in this chapter. These were effects that really didn't fit anywhere else in the book. The one effect that I've used that I think is really good is called Medium Well Done, and this is a 2-person telepathy effect with playing cards where the receiver will either be on the other side of the room or in another room, and you will have somebody select a card. They'll take a card out of the deck, look at it. You can give them the cards and they can put it anywhere they want. They can shuffle the cards as much as they want, and then you can just give the deck to the receiver, and they'll go through the deck and take out the card that they get the impression is the card that the person is thinking of. It feels really fair because the person can select any card they want. They can put it anywhere they want, and they can shuffle up the cards as much as they want. The method is really diabolical, and I think the best part about it is it doesn't take a huge amount of learning on the part of the receiver, because there's versions of this type of effect which require a lot of practice. So I think that this is one that's like a lot more user friendly. I will mention as a side for those people that are interested that if you have the pentagram, like I have back here, the pentagram by Peter Warlock, there's actually a version in there that is absolute killer. Perfect for stage or cabaret, where you can repeat the effect multiple times with any deck, and the receiver never needs to even touch the deck of cards. But that version will require a little bit of practice, but I just mentioned it to you guys because you may want to check it out. I'm not going to tell you what it is because that would rob you the opportunity of reading the Pentagram magazine. It's such a good magazine, so I'm not going to tell you where it is, but I just told you to look for it. I think that you'll like it a lot. The last chapter of the book is on predictions, and I really liked the detailed essay and analysis where he goes over how lay people digest predictions, on how they interpret them, and how their mind works when they observe predictions. And there's a lot of really good stuff in that chapter that I think you're going to like a lot. In terms of the effects, he uses 2 effects as examples. One of them is his shuffleboard effect, which you're probably familiar with because it's been published in many different places, as well as an effect that's called 2x2, which is actually a streamlined version of his effect called Twice as Hard that was published in Try the Impossible. I actually thought Twice as Hard is better just because it doesn't use any strange looking cards, and this version 2x2 you will need to have a deck of cards that have all numbers because it uses 2 decks of cards. I don't think anybody would even really use it, but the importance of the chapter is really the psychological aspect of predictions and how lay people interpret and react to prediction type effects, because when you think about it, there's very few things in magic that are as magical as when you present a prediction to a spectator where they are presented with many different choices that they could choose from, and yet that one choice fits perfectly. And when they think back to how this was possible and they have no good plausible explanation, even though as unlikely as it is, part of them has to accept that just maybe this really happened by chance, luck, or by magic, which almost doesn't make sense, which is why the any card at any number effect is so powerful, because a very good any card at any number effect, even if you present it as a coincidence type effect, oftentimes the spectator will leave with the impression that you somehow willed the outcome. They don't know how. They can't explain it, but it's very magical in their mind because they have a sense that it was going to work out no matter what they chose, even though they have no idea how that is possible, even when you tell them it was just a coincidence. Because anytime I've done a prediction type effect where I tell them that it's just a coincidence or if it was just luck, they never accept that as a rationale. They'll never accept that ever, which is kind of funny. They'll be like, yeah, right, which is great, you know. But it goes to show you that that's like human psychology. Anyway, that's everything I wanted to go over in this book, Art Deco. There's quite a bit more in here that I didn't touch on, but I just wanted to touch on the pieces that I found most useful over the past 10 years that I've been using material from this book. Hopefully something in this review has helped you and has piqued your interest. Thanks so much, guys, for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.